Hello, and thank you for tuning into this Engerati Studio interview at Asian Utility Week 2016. I'm Denise, and with me in the studio is Dr. Peter Lilienthal, and you are CEO at Homer Energy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
So in this session, we're going to be talking about the microgrid market in Asia. Let's delve into the first question. How should the microgrid market in Asia be viewed right now?
Well, I would say that best way to think about it is that there's more than one market.
Yeah.
So we think of four distinct markets and a couple of niches. But the original market that we developed Homer for 20 odd years ago is now usually called energy access. It's the people who have no access to energy at all. So there's something like 300 million of those people with no access in India. There's a sizable number in Indonesia, Myanmar, and a scattering in all the countries in Asia, really. But those are probably the three biggest ones in the Asian region. So that's one market. That's a place where there's no existing infrastructure. The second market is islands, and of course there's lots of islands in Asia. There's the Pacific Islands. Indonesia has something like 7,000 inhabited islands. The Philippines has several hundred, and actually every country has at least dozens. And so they have infrastructure, but it burns diesel. Fuel is very expensive, and renewables are very cost effective there. And so an integrated microgrid using renewables could be very helpful. The third market that's big in any country that has an unreliable utility, India is a perfect example, but many countries are like that, where everybody trying to run a commercial entity has a backup generator, or any middle or upper income household has a backup generator, and they use it often enough for the fuel consumption, the noise, the exhaust, etc., to be a problem. And it's worth looking at whether a solar plus storage solution could really be preferable. There's a fourth market, which is more in developed countries like Japan, which is also Asia, and the US, which is not really. But and we call it resilience there, where the grid's pretty reliable, but they worry about the extended outage from a typhoon or a terrorist attack that becomes a real public safety emergency, and you want to have your critical infrastructure, emergency services, your military facilities with backup that doesn't need constant fueling.
Yeah.
Then there's niches like ecotourism, mining, telecommunications that all need microgrids as well.
Okay. And what opportunities can I think you've mentioned a few of them already, but what are the biggest opportunities that the microgrid can actually deliver in Asia?
Well, it's a continuing debate internally which of those markets is the most promising. The developed country market is probably the biggest in the long run, but there's regulatory obstacles, so it's not clear exactly how quickly it's going to turn into a big market. The energy access market, 1.3 billion people, is potentially huge, but again, it's quite a challenge to market to them and to develop the human infrastructure, the support mechanism required for that market. So for a long time we were really focusing on the island market, but really we like all three of the markets and like being sort of diversified in terms of where our business is coming from.
Well, it certainly looks as if there's a lot of opportunity in all of them anyway.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
I want to just go back to the challenges, because I think you mentioned two there now, but
Right.
What are the biggest challenges that you see with regards to microgrid development? Why is it not developing perhaps as quickly as it could?
Well, across all four of them there is one theme, which is it's new, it's different, it actually is more complicated. I mean, putting in a diesel generator is a pretty simple thing to do. Microgrids require some integration, they require controls. Control technology is improving rapidly. They require storage, which is also improving rapidly, but is still expensive. I mean, what's really broken the market open is solar PV prices have come down, so that's really what's creating some momentum. But until enough people understand the systems are different, system design's different, appropriate tariff structures are different, the integration challenges, until people understand that we need a critical mass of people who really understand how those things are different, so we can set up the right regulatory structures, tariff structures, system design issues.
Yeah. We were discussing quite a while ago in the office about the perhaps perceived threat of the microgrid to utilities as a whole. I mean, what is your view on that?
Well, I think it's not just microgrids that are a threat to the utility, it's energy efficiency and renewables, and microgrids are just an excellent way to deploy those things at high penetration. So the threat is a little broader than just microgrids. And frankly, that's one of the reasons we tend to focus a little more on remote areas and islands, where in the island context, we're actually helping the utility because they're the ones using the fuel. And that's also, so that I think is more the near-term market. This really large grid-connected market where there is a threat to the utilities is why I think the regulatory reform that's required is very challenging. So how to keep the utilities whole when they're losing load is a huge challenge, and it will require a rethinking of the utility industry.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it might require write-downs of some of their assets, so they're always going to try to resist that.
Yeah.
That would be, in my mind, much preferable to people disconnecting from the grid. I think we want to have a regulatory structure that enables the existing grid to be maintained.
Yeah.
So that's a really big issue. Frankly, we want to do sort of an end run around it. That's an American football metaphor, excuse me. And promote microgrids where we don't have to worry so much about the regulatory reform.
Yeah. But I mean, microgrid development is actually, I mean, it provides a lot of opportunities for utilities if they snap them up in the right way, not so?
No, that could well be true. That could well be true. It's funny. The utilities get a lot of criticism for not being more innovative, and this does require innovation. From my perspective, though, a regulated utility really isn't the appropriate organization to be innovative. Their job is to keep the lights on, and that's a big job.
Yeah.
And you don't change the tires on your car while it's running down the road, and you don't make major changes to the utility industry while they're trying to keep the lights on. So microgrids actually are a great sort of platform for innovation. So that's where, trying to figure out how to do renewables at high penetration, how to integrate storage, how to manage the controls and load management that make microgrids so appealing is just better done at the microgrid level than at the large utility level.
Yeah. I know we're at Asian Utility Week, but perhaps you can, I know we're at Asian Utility Week, but perhaps you can shed some light on some of the most common mistakes that are made when it comes to microgrid development.
Yes. Well, historically, if you go back 10 years or even 5 years, really, most microgrids were developed by development agencies, grant funding, and they were mostly interested in the photo opportunity, the ribbon cutting ceremony. And so the support, the infrastructure, the maintenance and capacity building and technical and human support just isn't nearly as photogenic, it's not as sexy, and it got neglected. So they'd build these microgrids. Makes a great photo opportunity. There's nothing like seeing people get light for the first time in a remote village. It's amazing. But they didn't provide any provisions for keeping it going, and they didn't have enough community involvement in the first place. So the community felt like, well, this thing just fell out of the sky and it worked for a while and now it doesn't work anymore, and we're back to where we were, and they know how to do that. A lot of those pilot projects funded by grants from development agencies really did more harm than good. But that's changing now, because now people are seeing, no, wait a minute, this actually can be a viable commercial proposition. But it needs this support infrastructure behind it.
Yeah, definite ongoing, yeah. What do you think Asia's microgrids are going to look like in 5 to 10 years' time?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I alternate between calling myself an engineer and calling myself an economist. And economists are supposed to predict the future, but I don't like to do that, frankly. The future is very unknown by nature, by definition almost. But there's going to be these different kinds of microgrids. In 5 years, I would really like to see a lot of progress made bringing power to the 1.3 billion people who don't have it. Now, over half of those are in Africa, but a significant portion of them are in Asia. And I'd love to see all those places burning diesel fuel, and that's really a substantial portion of Asia, you know, and the Pacific, and reduce their diesel fuel consumption by half. You know, within 5 years, I don't think we'll be getting to 100% renewable, but if we could just reduce that diesel fuel consumption in half, that would be a huge step forward.
Yeah. Sure.
I'd like to think that all these utility companies that have non-technical loss, you know, theft problems, or have reliability problems, could solve those problems. I'm a little more skeptical about that happening, but you can always hope.
Yeah, absolutely. So, based on all this information you've given me, what would be your advice to this region's energy sectors when it comes to microgrid development?
Learn about them. Really embrace the potential and make sure you understand the potential. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about how to integrate renewables, the role of storage, et cetera. There's enormous potential there, but it really requires understanding this is different, and it's new and different. And my advice would be everybody should really take it on, whether you're talking about the utility industry, the utility, you know, decision makers, engineers and executives, the regulators, the suppliers, even the environmental advocates should get a lot smarter about what's the best way to clean up and make the utility sector and make it more reliable.
Lovely. I think we'll leave it right there. That's great
Okay,
advice.
thanks.
Thanks, Peter, for joining us.
Sure.
And thank you for joining the session. If you're wanting to gain more insight into Asian Utility Week, please have a look at our other videos on our website, ngrrt.com. Thank you.